When Washington raises tariffs, the headlines scream about China. But here's the shock. China shrugs it off. Because America is only a drop in the bucket of its economy. The country that really gets hit? Canada, America's closest ally. About a quarter of Canada's entire economy depends on selling into the US market. This is Global Notes by JP, where we break down the hidden forces behind money, trade, and power. If you want to see past the headlines and understand what really drives the global economy, you're in the right place. This is not a political video, it's an economic breakdown. And the lesson is simple. When your economy depends too much on one buyer, you don't have leverage, you have exposure. The United States is built to absorb shocks. Its economy is massive, diverse, and backed by the world's reserve currency. When tariffs rise, affluent Americans, who still drive nearly 40% of total consumer spending, keep buying. Corporations with wide margins can swallow higher costs. For the US, tariffs act more like a selective tax on the wealthy and on big business. They don't threaten stability. That's why Washington can wield them to protect industries, score political points, or pressure rivals without putting the system at risk. That's superpower leverage. Canada doesn't have that cushion. Roughly 3/4 of its exports flow south. Autos, lumber, steel, food, energy, industries that live or die on American demand. And this is after decades of privileged access. Under USMCA, most Canadian exports that meet rules of origin are tariff-free, and supply chains are deeply integrated. On paper, Canada should be protected. But that's the trap. Even with exemptions, uncertainty hangs over everything. One tariff threat, one rules of origin fight, one quota dispute, and investment freezes. Hiring stalls. Nobody bets big when the rules could shift overnight. The numbers prove it. In the second quarter of 2025, Canada's economy contracted at a 1.6% annualized pace. Business investment collapsed. Unemployment jumped to 7.1%, the highest in years outside the pandemic. And it shows up on the ground. Auto plants in Ontario have already scaled back shifts, and sawmills in British Columbia have delayed expansion. Privileged access didn't erase vulnerability, it magnified it. If you're finding this breakdown useful, make sure to subscribe to Global Notes. Every week we go beyond the headlines to explain how global power plays impact economies everywhere. Not every country faces this risk. China sells hundreds of billions of dollars to the US, but that equals only about 2 to 3% of its GDP. Europe and Japan are similar. High trade volumes, but no single customer defines their economies. Tariffs sting, but they don't dictate national growth. For Canada and Mexico, it's different. Mexico sends nearly 1/3 of its GDP worth of exports to the US. For Canada, it's about 1/4. That's concentration risk. And it means allies, not rivals, are often the ones who get hit hardest, especially when uncertainty rises even under USMCA. Even central banks show the divide. In September, the Federal Reserve cut rates with growth stabilizing and inflation cooling. It was a reassuring move signaling confidence in the outlook. The Bank of Canada also cut rates to 2.50% and signaled it could move further, but it's easing into weakness. For Washington, it's fine-tuning. For Ottawa, it's damage control. Here's the bottom line. For the US, tariffs are leverage. For China, they're irritation. But for Canada and Mexico, they're exposure, the one customer trap. And that's the hidden risk every nation faces. Depend too much on one buyer, and your economy is no longer independent. A US ally just got exposed, and it's a warning for everyone. This is Global Notes by JP. Subscribe if you want to see how America's leverage shapes not just its rivals, but even its closest friends. And check out our other videos for deeper dives into the global economy.